Hi, I'm Stuart from the Norfolk Honey Company and welcome back to my allotment apiary for our ongoing series of videos featuring our nucleus colony, which we've now introduced into a full-size beehive, which we're calling Getting Started in Beekeeping for 2017. We've created a playlist, so if you haven't seen any of the videos as yet, then take a look at the playlists and there'll be one entitled Getting Started. And we've been taking this nucleus colony from the spring through into the early summer, increasing it into a full-size colony in a full-size commercial hive, and last time we added a queen excluder and a super. I have received some criticism on the comments of the last video saying that I shouldn't now be taking honey off this colony because I've been feeding them, and that I shouldn't be feeding the bees and then expecting to take some honey off. At least that's the implication of the comment that was left. What I've been doing is actually feeding sugar syrup in order to build up the frames in the brood box until all of the frames in the brood box had been drawn, and then we've stopped feeding. And the important thing is that we're no longer feeding now that we have a super on top of the colony. And if you have a super with just foundation and you continue to feed, then the bees will not only draw out the foundation, but they'll start to store that sugar syrup in the frames as well. And in that instance, you can't then extract that and use that for honey. But we're not doing that. We've put on a super and have stopped feeding. And so any of the capped stores that the bees have got already in their brood box are going to remain in the brood box, and it's the nectar that the bees are now bringing in that will get stored in the super. But I'd love to hear any comments that any of you have regarding how you add supers to your colonies. This is just the process that I've always used and I've never had any problems previously, but I'd be very interested to hear what the more experienced beekeepers out there have to say about the issue. I'm going to just get the smoker lit and then we'll get into the colony and we'll see how they're doing, see whether they've started storing any nectar in the super, and just take a general quick look through. This time we're looking for queen cells. They had started to produce some rudimentary queen cups, and so we'll take a look through again. And it's important that through the summer you have a process of checking for queen cells on a regular basis so that the colony doesn't swarm and you lose any chance of an increase in colonies or a surplus of honey that you can then take to extract. So let's open up the hive and see what we've got. Okay, so we give them a little smoke at the entrance as usual. So when I inspect, the first thing I do is to remove the super and not look at the super at all, but go into the brood nest first. So we inspect from the bottom up so that we're not disturbing bees as we go down into the colony. So we take the super off and ignore the super, and we go into the brood box first. So let's see how the bees are doing. So that's the queen excluder off and at the front of the hive. So this frame is the frame that we're looking to eventually remove from the colony. And if you recall, it was full of brood the last time we looked. And we've now got brood that's emerged. There's a little bit more brood in there still to come out. So what can happen is that the bees, when you put in a new frame, the bees will extend a previous frame onto it. So what's happened here, and this is the frame that we put in last time, the bees have extended the next frame in and joined it to this one, and it's caused this damage. and they've not really done much to it at all, but that's now obviously torn some of the wax away and is going to make this frame quite difficult for the bees to use. We'll pop that on the floor in front of the hive as well, so that we've got a little bit more room to be able to check and see what's happening. So this week I'm using a standard hive tool. And again here we've got a nice amount of brood, and the bees are really storing the nectar away really well. And this frame again has lots of what we term brood in all stages, and there are eggs in this frame as well. So this is looking like a nice frame moving forward. And again, this week I'm just scanning across the frame, checking the cappings just to make sure that the cappings are all okay, checking to see that there are no queen cells, on this frame we have a little bit of drone brood in this position here, as you can see. But generally the bees are nice and calm on the frames and enjoying this nectar flow that they now have. We'll just use a little bit of smoke just to move the bees away from the top bars so that we can then pick them up. Again, another really good frame of brood. No sign of any queen cells as yet, so that's good news. And while I'm looking at the frames, I'm also looking at the bees and just checking that the bees are all looking really healthy, checking that they don't have any abnormalities with their wings, because that might indicate that they have a viral infection. And then this one feels really heavy, so this one is full of stores. There's a few eggs that have been laid on this side. I haven't seen the queen, but it's not a major issue when you don't see the queen. As long as you've got eggs in the colony, you know that she's been in the cells laying, certainly within the last 3 days. And these outer frames will form the bulk of the bees' food for the winter. Again, we're just going to check this end frame to make sure that it's not going to tear when we pull it away. It has actually got a certain amount of race comb holding it to the sidewall again. But as I was saying, these frames will form the bees' winter supplies, so it's important that they are able to fill those frames with the summer honey, get it stored, and then there's not such an issue with feeding them in the autumn. So it's good to see that they're storing in those outer frames as well. So I'm just going to push these frames back. So This frame is the problem frame. We're going to need to replace this one, but for now we'll pop it back into the colony, and then finally we have the end frame. Now, because we've got such a tight gap along this edge, if I were to now push this frame down and in, we're going to end up crushing lots of bees. So the best way to deal with this is to hold the frame across the brood box and just shake the bees off the frame nice and gently but firmly, and then you can lower the frame in, doing a minimal amount of damage to the bees before closing it up, and the bees will run back down through the gaps in the frame's top bars. And then just tap the bees off the queen excluder, put it on diagonally and wiggle it across, and that will prevent crushing bees beneath it. And now we can take a look at the super. So as I lift it, I can feel that there's some weight in it. As you can see, we've got bees now on the top of the queen excluder, so as we put the super down, I just wiggle the super across, and that just brushes the bees away so that they don't get crushed. There will inevitably be casualties, but the fewer the better, really. So let's have a look inside the super. So let's remove one of the frames, and here you can see how well the bees have done. So here you can see that the bees have extended the wax comb and they're filling it full of nectar and processing it to become honey. Let's remove another frame. Again, this frame is being filled really quickly with nectar stores, so next week we will need to put another super on them. Again, another frame, this time from the edge, and the bees are drawing it and filling it with stores really well. Okay, so we can pop the crime board back on. I'll tap the bees off the crime board, and you'll see that what I've done last week, rather than throw away the brace comb, I actually just placed it on top of the crime board. So what we're going to do this week is just remove this. The bees have cleaned it up and taken all of the stores, all of the nectar that was being stored in this wax down into the super. So we can remove this and then pop the crime board on, and we can save this wax for our wax exchange. So next week I'll clean the crime board up more thoroughly, and we'll bring along another super to put on the colony, and hopefully they'll then fill that with honey as well. It just remains to put the roof back on. A little bit of tidying up. And that completes another inspection for another week. So unfortunately I ran out of memory card space, so instead of the usual ending to our videos, I thought I'd just add a small clip of some of our bees in slow motion landing earlier this year with lots of pollen. And simply to say thanks very much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet already subscribed, and don't forget we have our Facebook group which you'd be more than welcome to join in with, and that's Stuart's Beekeeping Basics. Finally, I'd like to thank everybody that has visited and signed up on our Patreon page. You guys are there helping support me in producing these videos, and I very much appreciate your help and support. And I'll leave full details down in the description below. So I'll leave you with the image of these bees, and we'll catch up next time. Thanks for watching.